be others.
Yeah.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves have said they're not changing the name, or so it said on Sky Sports the other night.
Good for that.
But whether they will or not.
That's what the Redskins said as well.
Madness.
We are
Okay.
rewriting history here.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yes, Dave.
I mean,
Just going back to
somebody's
the
going to have-
racial abuse of McGoldrick, Wilfried Zaha was also abused on match day on Saturday, apparently, before the game. And they've got a 12-year-old at that. So hopefully they'll be able to find out who's done it to McGoldrick as well.
Yeah.
Could be a Chelsea supporter for all we know, scoring
More
two
than
against
that.
them.
Well, it could be, yeah.
Did anybody see Michael Holding's interview during the lunchtime sessions and what have you of the cricket
Yes.
on Black
Yes.
Lives Matter? And his interview with one of the West Indies players, I thought it was profound, I think I'd say. Brilliant. And if you can get
They
it...
replayed it on Sky News the day after.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Utterly brilliant.
Okay. Yes, Dave.
Could you just repeat that, please? I've only just come in. What was the interview you talked about, Ian?
They did a theme to the West Indies Test match of Black Lives Matter, and they got a young girl player and Michael Holding. And Michael
Ebony
Holding,
Rainford Brent.
Sorry?
It was Ebony Rainford Brent.
Thank you. I wasn't aware who it was, but Michael Holding, I think, so unassuming, so level-headed. I thought it was just a profound interview. He got it in one, you know, and I think he taught many people how to be just a human being. I just thought it was fabulous.
All right. Thank you. I'll look out for that. Try and get it.
So we notice that John's gone into the garden. Jenny's thrown him out at last.
I was just going to say a nice shot of his double glazing.
No, it's a bloody decorator. It's a decorator and a washing machine going at the same time. It's been a nightmare. And actually, my reception's not that good out here, so apologies for that. It's just been a bad morning so far.
Okay,
And it's
so
cold out here.
We'll continue with Lol's
Tribute
to Jack Charlton.
Okay. Well, there's so much I could have written about him, but I'd like give a brief resume all through his life. Now, Jack Charlton, he died at his home in Northumberland on 10th of July at the age of 85 after suffering from lymphoma and dementia, thus making him the 12th player from the 1966 World Cup squad to die. Born into a footballing family in Ashington, Northumberland, on the 8th of May 1935, Jack was initially overshadowed by his younger brother Bobby, who was taken on by Manchester United while he himself was doing national service with the Household Cavalry. The eldest of four brothers, Bobby, Gordon and Tommy, the tight finances of the family meant that all four siblings shared the same bed. His father, a miner, had no interest in football, but Mother Sissy played football with the children, and when they were older, took them to watch Newcastle United play at St James's Park. Jack remained a Newcastle fan all his life. At the age of 15, he was offered a trial at Leeds, where his uncle Jim was left back, but turned it and instead joined his father. A short time later, he handed in his notice after realising how difficult and unpleasant it was to work deep underground. He applied to join the police and reconsidered the offer from Leeds. His trial game for Leeds clashed with his police interview. Charlton chose to play in the game. The trial was a success and he joined the ground staff at Ellen Road. Playing for Leeds youth team in the Northern Intermediate League, then the third team in the Yorkshire League at the age of 16, he impressed and was soon put in the reserve team. Manager Rage Carter gave him his first professional contract on turning 17. He made his first team debut on the 25th of April 1953 against Doncaster Rovers, taking John Charles's place at centre half after Charles was moved up to centre forward. Not being given any specific instructions, Charlton asked Carter what was expected of him in the match. Carter replied, "See how fast their centre forward can limp." Now you know where they get the. He played 629 league games for Leeds, which is still a club record, and scored 70 goals. In total for Leeds, he played 762 competitive games. And then he retired in 1963 to go into management. Now, his international career began when Alf Ramsey called him up not long before his 30th birthday to play for England against Scotland at Wembley on the 10th of April 1965. The following year, he helped England win the World Cup, and in total played 35 games, scoring 6 goals before his international career ended in 1970. In his first managerial job, he led Middlesbrough to the second division title in 73-74, winning the Manager of the Year award in his first season as a manager. He kept Borough as a stable, top-flight club before he resigned in April 1977. He then took charge of Sheffield Wednesday in October 1977 and led the club to promotion out of the third division in 1979-80 season. He left the Owls in May 1983 and went to serve Middlesbrough for a second time, but as a caretaker manager at the end of the 83-84 season. This was followed by his dream job of managing his home boyhood club, Newcastle United, for the 84-85 season. Charlton resigned at the end of the pre-season training for the 85-86 campaign when fans called for his dismissal after the club failed to sign Eric Gates, who instead joined Laurie McMenemy at Sunderland. He then took charge of the Republic of Ireland national team in February 1986 and led them to their first ever World Cup in 1990, where they reached the quarter-finals. He also led the nation to qualifying for Euro 1988 and also the 1994 World Cup. He resigned in January 1996 and went into retirement. Now, in his personal life, he was a keen amateur fisherman and took part in field sports. He appeared on Desert Island Discs in 1972 and 1996. Eamon Andrews surprised him in 1973 when he was a subject of This Is Your Life. He got an OBE in 1974 and in 1996 was awarded honorary Irish citizenship, the highest honour the state gives, but is rarely granted. In 2005, he was inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame for services to football. And last December, was made a freeman of the City of Leeds, along with other members of the Revy team of the 60s and 70s, was unable to attend the ceremony. Now, just to finish off on, when he was at Wednesday, he was in charge for 303 matches, of which Wednesday won 122. They drew 94 and they lost 87. Now, there's so much more I could have said about him, but I'm going to leave it there, and you might want to put your own little bits into the mix if you like. All right.
Yeah, he was one of the few dirty Leeds players that I could live with. That he seemed an honest guy, whereas some of the others didn't.
Well, there's a rumour that he had a little black book with everybody he wanted to clog, but he said that was a lie. It was all in his head.
He had a little black book for certain.
Oh, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you for that, Lol.
Yes,
Terrific. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, we'll move on now. Just a second. Ian, did the dog clap its paws?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So we'll move on to Paul the Biscuit and his item on Peter Norman. So over to you, Paul.
Right, okay. We were talking about, we did a year quiz, 1968, a couple of weeks ago, and this came up as one of the sort of important things that happened in that particular year. Can you see that picture?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter Norman is the white guy standing at the front. Looking at him, you probably think he doesn't know what's going on, but that's the picture. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but that image was voted the second most iconic image of the 20th century. I don't know who votes for these things, but it was voted as the second most iconic. Guess what the first one was, perhaps?
Ali.
Muhammad Ali.
No, it wasn't a sporting thing.
No.
First
Man on the moon.
First man on the moon, correct. Yeah, so the most iconic image was the first man on the moon. The second one was the Black Power demonstration. By the way, talking about the first man on the moon, do you know that there are no photographs of Neil Armstrong on the moon?
Not take him.
Not a single one. All the pictures are of Buzz Aldrin. The only thing you've seen about Neil Armstrong is when he actually steps down, and the only image of him at all is a reflection in Buzz Aldrin's visor. But there are no pictures, apparently, of Neil Armstrong on the moon. I didn't know that. Anyway, you look at
that, Paul.
yeah, mine is absolutely useless information.
Have you not watched Mars TV?
I bet Neil Armstrong's family know, though. Yeah. Now, you look at that picture, though, of the Black Power demonstration, and you almost don't notice the guy at the front. And you might be forgiven for thinking that what took place that evening has absolutely nothing to do with him and that he's just a bit part player. He just happened to be there, sort of thing. But nothing could be further from the truth. His role is largely unknown, but when the authorities in Australia found out what he had done that evening, he was ostracised by almost the whole nation, many of whom have still never forgiven him. The Australian government in 2012 gave his family a public apology for the way he was treated by the Australian Olympic Committee. But that committee still haven't apologised to this day and don't believe he deserves one. When the Sydney Olympics were held in 2000, so that's 32 years after this event, he was the only former Australian medalist not invited to the celebrations. But he was so revered by Tommy Smith and John Carlos, the two who made the protest, if you like, that they travelled from the USA to be pallbearers at his funeral. Now, I know something of Peter Norman. Some of you know I'm a bit of an Olympic fan from those times, but many of you also know I play in the Salvation Army band in Sheffield. Now, my cousin married a guy from Melbourne, which was Peter Norman's home city, and he was in the Salvation Army in Melbourne. And my cousin's family are very close friends with the Norman family. So I do have a sort of slight family connection with him, if you like, but I've never met the guy, and all that I know of him is more or less through them. Peter Norman won the silver medal that day in a time which 52 years later is still an Australian record. And is still an oceanic record, so that I think that takes in New Zealand and the islands around. Smith won the gold, Tommy Smith, and John Carlos took the bronze. Now, it was thought by many who knew those two USA athletes that they would make some sort of protest on the victory rostrum, but nobody really knew what form it would take. And all three thought that the Olympics were airbrushing the problems in Mexico, where 300 students were massacred by government forces 2 days before the Olympics started. And it was also not long after in the USA, Martin Luther King was killed and Robert Kennedy was also assassinated. So there was a lot happening in the US as far as black protests, if you like, at the time. Now, after the final, Smith and Carlos told Norman that they were planning to do something at the ceremony. And they asked Norman Peter Norman, do you believe in human rights? And he said, yes, he did. And they said to him, do you believe in God? Norman, who came from the Salvation Army background, said that he strongly believed in God and that they knew that what they were going to do was far greater than any athletic feat. And he said, I'll stand with you. Carlos said he expected to see fear in Norman's eyes. He says, but he didn't. He says, I just saw love in his eyes. He said, on the medal ceremony, Norman's on the way to the medal ceremony, he saw another athlete who was wearing a Project for Human Rights badge. And he asked that athlete, can I wear it? Can I take it with me now? I want to wear it on the rostrum. And so Norman suggested that Smith and Carlos share the black gloves because, daft as it sounds, John and Carlos, they were both planning to wear black gloves, and Carlos forgot his.
Oh.
So, yeah. And so it was actually Peter Norman who said to them, well, why don't you share the gloves? And that is why the picture shows one with his right hand up and one with his left hand up, because they'd only got one pair of gloves between them. So they went up onto the rostrum. All three of them knew the dangers of what they were doing. Peter Norman wasn't actually sure that they would go through with it. And if you look at the picture, he is standing at the front. And it says, I wasn't sure, sorry, again, it says, I wasn't sure they would do it. And it wasn't until they stopped the US national anthem in only the fourth bar, he says, I knew they'd done it then. He says, but they were all three of them very frightened, and they discussed the fact before that if they heard the click of a rifle, that they would hit the deck. They already knew the reaction that it was likely to get. And incidentally, Tommy Smith always said that it was a human rights salute, not a black power salute. So human rights, not black power. Now, Peter Norman supported these men, even though he hardly knew them. And he did it really because of his religious upbringing. According to his family, he had empathy with everyone. And he knew that Australia had their own issues with the White Australia policy and the suppression of their own Indigenous people. The aftermath for the three athletes was savage. Smith lost his job in a car wash. He only had a job in a car wash, even though the sign across the front of the garage said that Tommy Smith works here, but he lost his job. His mother died of a heart attack 2 years later, distraught from the number of dead rats that she received in the post. Carlos's wife also suffered mentally, and she later took her own life. Attitudes softened a little in the US, and Smith and Carlos eventually received honorary doctorates, and a 23-foot statue was erected at San Jose University depicting their protest on the rostrum. For Peter Norman, the fallout was slow. But John Carlos said that Norman was the sacrificial lamb who had to face an entire country on his own. So despite being the fifth fastest sprinter in the world, he wasn't selected for the 1972 Olympics by Australia. The Australian Olympic Committee said that he didn't win their trials, which he didn't. But he had run the qualifying times for both the 100 and the 200 metres 15 times that year, but they still didn't pick him. Now, as I say, the Olympic celebrations 32 years later, he still wasn't invited. He became a pariah as far as the Australian Olympic Committee was concerned. And yet, strangely, Peter Norman continued to promote the Australian Olympic ideal up to his death, even though they disowned him. The Aussie Olympic Committee have always said that there was no snub to Norman. He just didn't qualify for the Munich Games. But his family thinks differently, and the Australian government, as I say, did issue that apology. So basically, that was his athletics career finished. It was in the amateur era, and he went back to playing Aussie rules football. Now, just this morning, I rang the guy up who I know, who knows Peter Norman, and he said, I know he's a big Aussie rules fan, he said, because I went to his wedding. He said, and 1 hour before his wedding, in his wedding suit, he was playing Aussie rules football on the road with the kids. He says, and I know because I was there. So he was a big fan, and he did play for West Brunswick Aussie Rules Club as a way of keeping fit. And he played 67 games for them from 1972, from retiring from his athletics to 1977. Became a coach as well. But in 85, Peter Norman contracted gangrene after tearing his Achilles tendon in a charity race. It deteriorated so much that he nearly had to have his leg amputated. But he died in 2006, aged 64. The family invited Tommy Smith and John Carlos to his funeral. Peter Norman had long since lost the badge that he wore on that Olympic roster, but John Carlos borrowed one, and he placed it on his coffin as they lowered it into the grave. Now, the USA Track and Field Federation declared the day of Peter Norman's funeral Peter Norman Day. Now, that's the USA did that, declared it Peter Norman Day, but the Australian Olympic Committee still don't recognise him. And if you think that things like that don't happen anymore, there is a modern day parallel. An American athlete, a girl called Gwen Berry, last year gave a raised fist salute after winning gold medal at the Pan American Games. The next day, she was told that there would be repercussions. And from that day on, she has received no funding from the US Track and Field Committee. She talks to John Carlos every week, apparently. John Carlos is now 75, and she is hoping to be crowdfunded to go to the Tokyo Olympics next year. So that happened in 68. In 2020, it's still happening to American athletes now. That's the story of Peter Norman. Not well known, but amazing guy, apparently. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Brilliant out, Paul. Brilliant. Ian.
Just one question for Paul. If you could put your picture up, Paul, put your photo up. A little bit higher.
Sorry. Is that okay?
What is Norman supposed to do? The two guys wearing black gloves, well, one pair's already left in the locker room, so they're sharing. He's standing to attention to a foreign national anthem. What is he supposed to do?
It's because they found out that he'd actually said that he would support them and wore the human rights badge. It wasn't permitted to make any sort of, and still isn't permitted to make any sort of political demonstration in an Olympic venue.
I think the cart's before the horse here. He stood there in neutral position, not saying for or against.
Yeah.
Yet his nation pillories him.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
I mean, it's awful. I'm very surprised about the Australians doing that, because generally speaking, the Aussies come as
liberal.
I'll not say go lucky, but
Tell the Aborigines that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly the comment that I was going to make. The Aborigines wouldn't say that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't think it's just the Aborigines. It's also this white only. Their racism is against the yellow races, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Southeast Asians. A very racist country, or were.
Yeah. Susan, yes. Dave?
Hello. Talking about the Aborigines, there's a book, if anyone's interested in reading, they call it The Rabbit Proof Fence, which is a book.
Oh, yeah. Great film.
Oh, I didn't know there's a film, but I've read the book.
It is. It's a terrific film.
It's talking about the segregation, and it's very current, really, with Trump building his wall to keep the Mexicans out. Well, this is where they built the fence to keep the Aborigines out. And it was a superb book. So if anybody comes across it, it's worth reading.
Yeah, Brian?
Yeah, this guy just strikes me as being a man of principle, much like, was it Eric Liddell? Many years before him, who refused to race on Sunday. And I think for for this individual, it probably wasn't anything to do with black, white, yellow, green, or whatever. It was just about fair play and human rights, and that's what strikes me. It's just a guy who is a man of principle.
Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if he did it today.
Paul?
In answer to Ian's question, it might be very similar. But I don't know. I was just going to say, when you mentioned about a film being made, there has been a film made about Peter Norman, a documentary film. It's called Salute. You can get it. I've seen it. It's a good film. And his nephew, Peter Norman's nephew, is in the process of making another film about him, and isn't receiving any cooperation whatsoever with the Australian Olympic Committee.
Amazing.
Awful. Yeah. I mean, the parallels are as they are at the moment. I mean, David McGoldrick's received his abuse primarily. He was one of the movers to drop the knee before the games. Apparently, it was him and I think Tyrone Mings or another Villa player who discussed doing it, and he got everyone to do it. And of course, everybody's now doing it in all sports. But apparently, I didn't know this till I read it yesterday. But David Goldrick was one of the prime movers to get that.
Yeah, go around that side.
Yes, Big Paul.
Not Formula One. The first Austrian Grand Prix. Not all of the drivers took the knee. There was some just stood. Not everybody took the knee there on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, thanks for that, Paul. Has anyone got a quiz, John?
Well, can I just point out that I didn't finish my quiz last week because you cut me off?
That's what I mean. So you've got 8 minutes.
No, it was a pretty crap quiz, but you what, Ron?
Never want to hold a grudge.
Never.
never. Only always. Yeah. What's the point in having a grudge if you don't maintain it the rest of your life?
Absolutely.
Anyway, I was on to 1961, and we just talked about the Derby games. What position did United finish in 1961?
5th.
Above
and what
Wednesday.
position did Wednesday finish?
6th.
And how many points did United got?
1 more than Wednesday.
47, and Wednesday got 46. Yeah, 46. Yeah. United scored 61 goals and conceded 69. Wednesday scored 72 goals and conceded 58. Funny old game, isn't it? Who won the FA Cup in 61?
Tottenham.
Yeah. And who did they beat?
Burnley.
Leicester. No, Burnley year after.
No.
And who was the scorers in it?
Hang on.
What?
You're wrong, John. 60-61 season. When,
I'm wrong. What?
Tottenham beat Leicester.
I'm wrong that Leicester, but Tottenham won the cup in 61.
Right. Tottenham won it in 61. Sorry. Yes, you're right. Sorry.
I'm dead right. Never told the grudge. But you're wrong again, Keith. I mean, that was year that you got to semi-final and lost to Leicester after 3 games, didn't you?
Yeah, but hang on a minute then. If we're talking 60-61 season, the season you've just asked about, the finishing places, was the 61.
No, we're talking about the year 1961.
Well, United didn't finish 5th in the first division. They finished 2nd in division 2.
All right, then 61-62 you finished 5th, didn't you?
Yes.
Anybody got a gun?
Carry on.
I'll edit this, don't worry.
I've lost the will to live. I've already had a bad meeting, so.
No, you've made my meeting.
John.
Hey?
I say you've made
Carry
that
on.
meeting.
No, go on, John.
I've got
Nobody knows. No, carry on.
Have you got your quiz?
Well, I've got what's left of it. I'm just waiting for you to let me do it.
Go on then.
61.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Are you really friends, you two?
Yeah.
Are you really friends, you two?
What was it? It was the first final of which competition in 1961?
League
Cup.
Cup.
The League Cup. Yeah. And who were the winners?
Rotherham.
Aston
Aston
Villa.
Villa. Beat Rotherham.
Villa beat Rotherham
Over 2 legs.
3-2 after extra time of the second leg.
It was pouring with rain.
Pardon?
It was pouring with rain that night.
Was it?
So,
Which
Yeah.
year are we in?
God knows, Ian. I don't know. Who won the European Cup?
Real Madrid.
And who did
Benfica.
Benfica. And who did they beat?
Real Madrid.
No.
Barcelona.
Barcelona. At the Wankdorf Stadium. We've had many a laugh about the Wankdorf Stadium in the past, haven't we?
Is that the one in Amsterdam?
It's in Bern.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Burns.
And it was the first ever European Cup Winners' Cup final, the Cup Winners' Cup final in '61. Who were the finalists?
Tottenham.
No, Scottish team and an Italian team.
Rangers. And
Rangers.
AC Milan.
Oh, no, Fiorentina. And what was unique about that first final?
It was first.
It was first, yeah. But even more unique, yeah. It was the only one played over 2 legs.
Right.
Ah.
Yeah. And Fiorentina won 2-0 in Glasgow and 2-1 in Florence. Who were the 5 Nations champions of rugby?
England.
No.
France.
France. Who were the Rugby League Cup final winners?
St Helens.
Off for Ian.
St Helens.
Go on, Ian.
Can I have a St Helens from Ian?
Yeah, up and under.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. St Helens beat Wigan 12-6. Who were the county champions at cricket?
Yorkshire.
Sorry.
No. Yorkshire were
Hampshire.
second. Hampshire,
Hampshire.
268 points. Yorkshire were second with 250. And who won the Ashes?
Don't ask.
Australia.
Either England or Australia.
Yeah. Australia. Who was Australia's captain at that time?
Richie Beno.
Yeah. And what about England?
Peter May. Peter May.
Peter May. Yeah.
Ted Dexter.
Yeah. England won by 8 wickets at Headingley. How many wickets did Freddie Truman get?
None.
8.
Close.
9.
Even closer.
10.
11.
10.
Freddie Truman got 11
11.
wickets. Yeah. After a 1-1 draw at home in the 4th round of the Cup in front of a 58,000 crowd, Wednesday beat which future European champions away in front of what crowd?
Forest.
Dave Redfern. Who did we beat away in 58? Yeah.
Barcelona.
Sorry, not in 58, in 61. Yeah. Manchester United. We beat them 7-2.
Yeah.
Can we just?
That's all right.
Where are we in?
It's got to get that in.
Yeah. 61.
61, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we beat Manchester United 7-2 in a replay. And I thought you were Ronnie Biggs,
Replay.
but it's Ronnie Briggs in goal for Manchester United, standing in for Harry Gregg. And Ronnie Briggs conceded 6 in his first game against Leicester, 4 in his first of 2 games for Northern Ireland against Wales. and then 7 against Wednesday. But Harry Catterick sent him a supportive letter saying, "Thank you very much. You'll be all right."
John,
Yeah?
we've got less than a minute to go, so can we do a part 3 of your quiz next week, please?
No, it's not worth it. There's a right load of rubbish following this.
No. So
I'll ask you one question. There was a record fee paid for a British player, £100,000. Who was the player?
Jimmy Greaves.
Ball.
No. He went to Italy.
Joe Baker.
No, he played for
Dennis
Forest.
No, Dennis Law went from Manchester City to Torino for 100,000.
Right. Okay, chaps, I'm going to have to